This is the process. You wouldn't be here if you didn't need to be here.
When I think about Fargo, I think about a character who makes a choice and things snowballing in a way that takes them to places they would never get to otherwise. At some point when things get absurd, there's a sense that it could all be undone if they just told the truth, which by design is the one thing they can't do. It's why Dot's inability to tell the truth about the kidnapping and what happened at their home when it burned down has had me scratching my old noggin. I kept trying to figure out why she was trying to cover up her past when it didn't seem likely she would be complicit in anything that might come to light. Before we get into this, I should also add that as a general rule, I don't like "it was all a dream" reveals. I don't think anyone does. But rules are made to be broken, and I think there are right ways to do it. First, don't drag it out. Ideally, make it clear that that's what happened in the same episode. And then just do it for a good reason, which is where I think this dream makes sense. I believe Dot needed this relationship with Wayne when she was running from the situation that we get a much clearer understanding of in this episode. Of course, the dream and the marionettes are a good way to address those things, which are all very grim. But I also think that she found something real in her current marriage, something to protect. Which led me to think that denial was the motivating factor in not wanting to reveal what was happening. But through the dream, when we go inside her head, we realize that it's also because she didn't think anyone would believe her. The premise of her trip to Camp Utopia is to get Linda to return to tell the truth about what happened so that people will believe her story, and so that she can make any accusations stick. This is a lot simpler than any of the ideas I had to make her actions make sense. So in this instance, I consider myself a member of Team Dream. When we first catch up with her after her absence in the previous episode, Dot is falling asleep at the wheel. She drifts onto the shoulder and sort of wakes up at the last possible second, and then decides to pull into a truck stop to get some coffee and pancakes. With the hindsight that comes from knowing what happened, there are a lot of clues in this sequence about what's to come. The song playing on the radio is "I'm Your Puppet." The first interior shot of her coming through the door is framed by a close-up of the Camp Utopia postcard. On the corkboard she looks at above the table, there's a flyer for a doll fair and a chicken piccata recipe. Those are all the really obvious things, and there's probably more if you really look at it. The waitress brings her coffee and asks a simple question: to or from? Are you heading to something or running from something? Dot provides a simple answer for that, just saying she's going home. And then the waitress follows up with, as in you're going home or running away from home, which at this point would require Dot to provide more information than she'd want to. So she changes the subject to ask about their pancakes. She nods off while she waits and appears to wake up when the plate of the county's best and the decorative smiley face that comes with them are put in front of her. I've watched the episode a couple of times, and there are a few things I'm not sure about. I think that's by design, or else it's not essential for what happens next. Based on the way it's presented, I think the moment when she falls asleep while waiting is when the dream happens. And she does go outside for the accident to happen afterward. You could make the case that she fell asleep driving and crashed the Kia to end up in the hospital that way. But the point is that the dream is necessary for her to see things as they are rather than how she'd like them to be. It starts with her pulling off on the side of the road and retrieving a Camp Utopia postcard from a metal box that was hidden underground at the base of a windmill. It says "I'm sorry" on the back and is signed by Linda. This is probably metaphorical. The windmill makes you think of a ranch, which makes you think of Roy, and Dot wanting to keep this idea hidden and safe. The first time I watched the episode, it seemed like something she might do. We have no idea where she's headed, so while it did seem a little convenient that she ran out of gas right after she passed the sign for Camp Utopia, the thing that's on the postcard, it isn't 100% clear that it's a dream yet. I had the sense that something wasn't as it seemed, but it's Fargo, so it's hard to say for sure. Even when she wandered into the puppet show and passed out, it's a thing you could imagine happening. Plus, she's still wearing the scrub she took from the nurse she knocked out, and Mr. 6 Feet of Intestine's jacket, which totally connects it to reality. It toes the line even as things get less believable. Did Roy's first wife escape and create a safe harbor for abused women? Most likely not. Just like I probably haven't been reading the word sportage incorrectly all these years. But does Dot blame her for leaving her there with an abusive monster? Absolutely. Because this all occurs inside the confines of the dream, we'll probably never know if how she feels about it is true, which is what I think is important whenever Dorothy confronts Linda. In her mind, Saint Linda got away, and when she gets to ask her why, Linda tells her they have to hold a trial to find the true truth. Linda has told the group her truth, Dorothy needs to tell them hers, and then they'll decide. But this all happens in the form of a puppet show, so she's tasked with making one to represent herself. This isn't something she wants to do at first. She already has a new name, and she's already had 10 years of bliss with Wayne. In her mind, Linda owes her, and she just needs her to come through now that Roy's found her. She eventually realizes there's no way around it, and then fully embraces the process. From here, the episode becomes something different. There are obvious connections between the process and her processing the truth about what happened to her, which is highlighted by the care she gives to the puppet as she creates it. The puppet show itself looks fantastic, and it's a nice touch that they have Juno Temple do the voices of all the characters herself, just as Dot would do if she was presenting it to the group. The story she tells isn't that surprising given the hints we picked up thus far, but it doesn't make it any less affecting. Roy was abusing Linda and started grooming Nadine to take her place at the age of 15 after they took her in. I imagine the parts that pertain to Roy pretty much happened as she portrays them, and that it's told through puppets somehow manages to make it seem all the more real. There is some gray area around the role she's assigned Linda and her ultimate fate, and I think the most surprising image is when we see the young Gator put his head on Nadine's lap. She does forgive Linda for leaving them behind, citing fight or flight, but this moment with Gator makes me wonder how Nadine feels about leaving him behind. When she brings him up to Linda during the dinner scene, you can see that she holds on to some affection for him. When she says that, you can see it in his eyes. He wants to be good, but more than that, he wants to be like his dad. She makes it through to the other side, and this imaginary group of women are there to comfort her. Linda agrees to return with her and help expose Roy, but of course this is only what she would want to happen if she could dream the perfect solution to her problem. She wakes back up, leaves the diner, and then a semi hits a car in the parking lot that then hits her, and she wakes up one more time in the hospital. The nurse tells her that her husband has been waiting for her to wake up, and when he comes in, it's Roy instead of Wayne. That sets up a cliffhanger where it looks like he's finally caught her, and we have to wait until next week to see what happens next. This reveal played in the opposite fashion of the dream. The hints that this would be Roy came so quickly that I think most of us knew it would be him by the time he came into the room. Speaking of Wayne, his condition is improving, and they use a funny interaction with Scotty and one of his salesmen to show that he isn't exactly back to his old self, but he's better than he was when the FBI came to see him at the hospital. Scotty holds his attention with questions about mammals that lay eggs, while the salesman tells him a nice family wants a Rio, but their credit isn't good enough. For Wayne, this is an easy one. His solution? Give a car, get a car. Trade their used Sportage for a brand new Rio. What's so hard about that? Later, there's another cute scene where we see that Scotty is sort of coaching him back into being her dad. The bedtime story he tells her about her mom is very sweet and serves as a real contrast to the puppet show, while adding the reminder of what she's fighting for. I'm not sure if his rethinking of capitalism and tunnel vision that only extends to wanting to spend time with Scotty are hints that he's been changed permanently by the shock. We'll have to wait and see if these ticks slip away and he returns to being the man Dot is fighting so hard to return to, which to be fair already had a lot going for him. Finally, Munch's mama, who is credited as Irma, has a real son. He's about as unlikable as they come, so unsurprisingly, Munch isn't happy to meet him and doesn't take kindly to his disrespect. In the larger context, this scene exists to reaffirm that Munch and Irma have this thing going, and it stands out that when he explains their arrangement, he uses the word trade. He doesn't pay her for room and board. Instead, he serves as the dog in the front yard to guard the house. The deadbeat son reserves his spot at the top of the list of things she needs protection from, and he gets a fleeting moment of thinking he just hit the jackpot before getting an axe to the chest. Gator uses the tracking device to find them. When he shows up, it looks like Ole Munch is sitting in his rocking chair in front of the upstairs window. So he posts up across the street and delivers a headshot. When he goes to recover the tracking device, he notices the bag of money Munch got from Roy in the back seat. And when he tries to take that, Irma returns from her beer run to see him breaking into her car. She attacks him with a bag of oranges. He shoves her. She falls and cracks her head on the curb. And she dies. Technically an accident, but this will obviously bring forth a level of retribution we haven't experienced from the 500-year-old Sin Eater to this point in the story. The look on his face says it all, which I might add is the polar opposite of the expression Dot makes after she finishes telling her story. And accident or not, Gator did come there to try to kill Munch, which you never know might have been seen as a lesser offense. But it's hard to imagine that settling up and making the Tillmans pay won't be the driving force of Munch's existence for the foreseeable future. By taking the payment back, he basically reneged and reestablished their debt. So yeah, this was a huge mistake by Gator. There's a delicate balance to pulling off the dream. Using puppets is a way of making the ugliness a little more palatable, but then there's also the risk of turning it into something else. I think they pulled it off, and what makes that seem so seamless is that the clues about what's happening don't completely tip you off until you see her wake up with the pancakes in front of her the second time. The clues add up along the way rather than taking away from Dot's experience. For me, the car running out of gas in exactly the right place after she just left the gas station, the way that the sound wasn't properly synced when Lindo started talking, and just the general vibe of the place with all the Lindas working so happily on the grounds made me question what was happening. But it wasn't even until she was getting ready to walk up the stairs to the stage that it hit me that I'm Your Puppet was playing on the radio after she changed the station. And it wasn't until after she finished the story and Linda agreed to go with her that I was sure it wasn't real. Which, saying that, also seems incorrect. The events of the episode may not have happened in the real world, but it was certainly real for Dot. The way it came together and the way that you can look back and see how it was set up made it so I didn't think, oh man, she dreamed all of that. What a big waste of time, when the truth was finally revealed. The idea of truth is a nice addition to the final stretch of this season. I suppose it's fitting because this takes place as close to the present as possible, and the post-truth world is where we find ourselves. This notion that no one would believe her is a smart way to bring that to the surface. So I'm excited to see where they go from here, because more and more the truth seems to be shaped by how we feel about something, or what we believe, or more depressingly, what we think we need it to be, or how we want it to be. And I think that's a great place to leave things. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.